Both across the United States and in the Southeast, the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions is the transportation sector. If we're serious about addressing the climate crisis and we understand the urgency that we need to move, that urgency needs to be reflected in how we're investing in our transportation system now. This isn't something that can wait. I'm Brian Gist. I'm a senior attorney in the Atlanta office of the Southern Environmental Law Center. I focus on air quality and transportation in Georgia. Atlanta is famous for its transportation challenges, and in many places in our city, the only way to get where you're going is to drive. Atlanta has some of the longest commute times of any metro area in the country, and that in part is a function of how we've built and designed our city. So we've built a city that is lower density, that is very large in its geographic scale, and also is heavily dependent on the automobile. And this has created a cycle where people focus on how do we fix traffic rather than how do I have a better option for going about my daily life. One of the things that's appealing about doing this work, particularly in Atlanta, is that everyone agrees we have a transportation problem. And so when you start with the common understanding that there's a problem, I think that sets the stage for a conversation about what's the solution to that problem.
Okay, here we go.
In 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed, and this really was a transformative moment for transportation in the United States. The Infrastructure Act makes $1.2 trillion available. It provides funding in two ways. First, it makes funding available directly to the states and allows the states flexibility in deciding which projects are the best use of that funding. For Georgia, this means a 21% increase in transportation funding in the first year. Second, the Infrastructure Act makes funding available through competitive grant programs. There are over 200 different areas that states and local governments can apply for these competitive federal grants to build their projects. The increase in funding that's available creates an opportunity, but it also creates a risk. It creates the risk that we'll use this increase in funding to double down on the projects that we've built in the past that have created the transportation system we find ourselves in today. But SELC is uniquely equipped to think about how can we influence those decisions that are made at the agency level by those local governments. One example of working collaboratively with a local government is our support for the Stitch project in the city of Atlanta. The Downtown Business District and the City of Atlanta reached out to SELC as a partner to help them secure their Reconnecting Communities grant that would allow them to perform additional design and engineering in furthering the Stitch project.
So we're here in Midtown Atlanta at the 5th Street Bridge, and over my right shoulder, what you see is the downtown connector. So this is the main interstate running through the city of Atlanta. And right now, as we're approaching rush hour, it's full of cars. And over my left shoulder, you have the 5th Street Bridge, which is a wider than normal bridge built to create a green space that reconnects the two sides of the interstate. So looking around, you wouldn't believe that you're actually standing over the highway, but it actually runs this way. And so on one side, you have the campus of Georgia Tech. On the other side, you have the Midtown Business District. And right below my feet is actually 16 lanes of interstate highway. So this is an example of trying to retrofit some of the mistakes that we've made in the past. In the past, we really emphasized trying to move cars around the city. And so that was the reason we build wider and wider highways. But the idea for the Stitch project is to really put a cap on the freeway. Instead of just being a wider than usual bridge, we'll actually put a cap that spans multiple city blocks. SELC supports projects like the Stitch and other similar ideas to reconnect communities because we can't simply expect people to drive less if we don't give them a safe, pleasant alternative. And so by making places where you can walk, where you can ride a bicycle, where you can use transit, and making that as pleasant and as safe as driving an automobile, we're providing people with a viable option. Those are really the objectives of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. We're trying to build transportation projects that achieve our climate goals and also build a more equitable transportation system.
This bill was also important because it laid out clear policy objectives, and in particular, it was oriented towards addressing the climate and equity challenges that our historic investment in transportation has created. In the 50s and 60s, the United States invested very heavily in building out the interstate highway system. And almost with surgical precision, communities of color and low-wealth communities were targeted as the places where we chose to put these roads. And they not only divided the communities that were previously there, but they also forced the residents who remain to bear the consequences. They're the ones breathing the air pollution and suffering from the noise. They're the ones who are divided from their neighbors by the existence of these roadways. So this isn't simply an artifact of decisions that were made 50 or 60 years ago. We're continuing to build on those mistakes of the past now through the decisions we're making to expand our roadway system today. We want to do something differently. We have the opportunity to do something differently, and we have a historic amount of money available for us to do that. And that's why it's so important for us to seize this opportunity. The bipartisan infrastructure law not only makes funding available for traditional forms of transportation, the roads and bridges, the airports and the ports, but it also invests in other areas that haven't seen the same level of investment. Things like electric vehicles, sidewalks, pedestrian safety. Because we've designed many of our roadways around the car and allowing people to drive fast, we've made it more difficult and in many times more dangerous for people who want to get around without driving. So for people who want to walk or ride a bicycle, it may be dangerous or difficult to use those same roadways because we've designed them around the automobile. And so one of the things that the bipartisan infrastructure law provides is money to retrofit those roadways to make them safer for all people.
So we're here in Midtown Atlanta. We're right by Piedmont Park. And what you'll see is an intersection that has been retrofitted with a number of measures to make it safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. So for example, what you'll see is the signal over the intersection. Pedestrians can push a button, the light will start flashing and traffic will stop, and that allows pedestrians to walk safely across the road. You also see that we've taken a lane of traffic and dedicated it to bicycle lanes. So you have a physical barrier between where the bicycles are and where the automobiles are, and that allows people to feel safer as they're using this space on their bicycle. You also see the green striping on the pavement. That's called a bicycle box. And what that allows the bicyclists to do is a safe place to wait as they're waiting for a break in the traffic so they can make a left turn across the roadway. These are an example of the kind of things that we can install in other areas, like in the corridor along Pryor and Central Street, where the Safe Streets for All grant would be used.
So this grant would provide $30 million for pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure in a corridor that runs south from downtown and connects with the Atlanta Beltline. This neighborhood between downtown and the Beltline is a Black neighborhood where we historically have not seen investment in things like pedestrian and bicycle safety. So this project will allow residents to better access both the Atlanta Beltline and the economic development that's occurring around that, but also downtown with all of the jobs and educational opportunities that are located there. This project really exemplifies what the infrastructure law is intended to do. This is making a different type of investment in a different type of area than we've made in the past, and is allowing us to move away from an auto-centric corridor to a road that really serves not only drivers, but also people walking or riding their bicycle or using transit. SELC is uniquely poised for this moment because we're a place-based organization. That allows us to leverage our national expertise, but ground it with the realities in local communities. So we understand where these projects will be built, and we understand whether they'll be beneficial or not. This is such an exciting moment because we have a confluence of three things. First, we have clear policy direction to focus on climate and equity. Second, we have the appetite at the local level to pursue different types of projects, to build things differently than we have in the past. And third, we have a historic amount of money available to do this. We can actually pay for the things that we haven't always been able to pay for. That's what makes this such a historic and exciting opportunity for the South.